Om Shanti. The subject that we're going to look at today is, the deep depths of purity. Baba has been talking about purity, and especially Baba's been saying that, along with celibacy, purity also means to be free from anger. And so everybody must have been practicing the anger-free stage, yeah? Yes? Successful? Yes, no? No? It's all right. But I thought that we could take a look at what exactly is purity. Because it's quite intangible, but on the other hand, very tangible. For example, when you go into Daddy Gulzar's room, you feel something. Yeah? I don't know if you've been there. But it's got an atmosphere, which is really an atmosphere of purity. Now, I personally think of what I call the 5 elements of the soul being peace, power, love, purity, and bliss. Those 5. We have the 5 elements of matter: air, earth, fire, water, and ether. And sometimes in the Murli, it's translated as sky. This word akash is given as sky, but akash is actually ether. So what is ether? Or space? Where there is none of the elements that are very tangible, there is ether. And so purity, I think, is a little bit like that. You know what peace is like, right? Silent and undisturbed and this type of thing. And you know what love is like, right? You know what love, if somebody loves you or if you feel love, you know what that is, yeah? And you know what bliss is, yeah? Maybe you don't, but you could. And you know what power is. You know the feeling. Well, the feeling of purity is quite subtle. So if we were going to talk about the deep depths of purity, we're talking about something very, very subtle. So Baba has said, purity can be described as celibacy, and so if we say celibacy is purity, then what it means is that, in a way, you could say that you are able to transcend normal biological urges, right? Celibacy on a physical level. Then you have the kind of thing that's to do with attraction. And so if you are attracted to someone's beauty or their personality or something like this, so that would be impurity, or you want to be with them in particular. You come into that person's aura, you get pulled into some human being, some bodily person, and you are not neutral towards that person. You're attracted emotionally, physically, aesthetically, however it may be. And all of this is because there is that sense that some other person will somehow make me feel better or make me more complete, like that. So you could say that impurity is a sense of being incomplete. Do you follow me? Yeah? There's a bit of allergy going on, so excuse me. So then Baba says, okay, purity means not succumbing to anger. And of course there's many varieties of anger, irritation, wanting to be away from somewhere. So you can say that the aspect of celibacy is dealing with our attraction part, and the aspect of anger, we may say, dealing with the repulsion part. So wherever there is attraction and repulsion, then we could say there is impurity. So in that sense, we could say that purity has to do with being neutral in regard to anything material. Now, Baba hasn't talked about the impurity of greed, but he may do that. If you have a price, if you can be bought, if somebody gives you money and uses that to get you to think a certain way or do a certain thing, we call that corruption. And that's also a kind of impurity that's based on greed. So impurity is very much to do with desire. And desire is very much to do with, again, that sense of being incomplete. So we have this word karmatit, which is also associated with the idea of being complete. When you hear the praise of the deity, it's said the deity is completely viceless and complete with all the virtues, 16 celestial degrees complete, and following all of the maryadas. This word maryada purushottam is used. Have you heard this word purushottam? Sometimes you hear it in connection with the confluence age. You say Purushottam Sangam Yoga. So Purushottam means the elevated person. So purity has to do with being elevated. So elevated has to do with not being low. That means not being ordinary. That means not doing anything which could be on your conscience. When we go into the subtleties of purity, I think we need to go outside of the range of emotions. And in fact, I do think that all of the vices are negative emotions. And then the positive emotions, I would say, they're not emotions, but we may say, sometimes they use the word feelings. So you say feelings are something positive, emotions are something negative. Of course, all of these words could be positive and negative, but here we are trying to put a vocabulary to the concepts that Baba is talking to us about, and which are very subtle. So it's quite difficult to find the right words. And so within our Brahman language, we have our own words for certain things. So I think one of the ways in which Baba teaches us subtle concepts is by contrast and comparison. Excuse me. So I think that one of the ways of finding out for ourselves what is meant by purity is by comparing it with impurity, what we think is impurity. I personally think we need to move away from morality. This may be an unusual thing to say, but I studied morality and ethics quite a lot. And not only the concepts, but also the words. And the word morality comes from a Latin base, in English that is. And it means the prevailing social attitudes. And ethics is exactly the same thing, but it's a Greek base. Now, when we come into Gyan, we actually move away from prevailing social attitudes. And we are also a community of people, so we are creating our own prevailing social attitudes. And when Baba speaks about Brahman culture, and that also is a kind of prevailing social attitude within all of us. But Brahman culture is in the process of getting created. It's not set in stone, really. And so we are every day listening to the Murli and trying to figure out how we're going to interpret all these things. And there are people who are quite moralistic. You must have come across that. You have to do this, you can't do that, you're bad, you're good, whatever, whatever. And that's okay, but I find that quite lokic. So I think that we want to move away from that sort of thing. Because it's, I think, quite ordinary. And I think what we're trying to reach is something very extraordinary. And so I tell people I really do not teach morality. People's morality is their own affair. So when Baba talks about purity, I like to take it out of the range of morality. In religion, morality is a big part of religion. You have to do this, you can't do that, this is what you have to wear, you can't wear this, you have to eat this, you can't wear that, etc., etc. So I think that we don't do these things for moral reasons. We may do them for hygiene reasons, or we may do them for chemical reasons, or we may do them for all kinds of other reasons, but not moral reasons. Because we are trying to apply Shrimat to ourselves, right? And so there is Manmat, and there is Parmat, and there is Shrimat. And in my thoughts, Shrimat is what comes from God, who is not really bothered about what people think. People are very bothered about what people think. And one of the practices of Raj Yoga is the practice of being free from something called loklaj. Have you heard this word loklaj before? So loklaj is public opinion. And so morality and public opinion is pretty much the same thing. And it's very variable. Shrimat is the directions of God. And so what he tells us, the actual Shrimat, the essential Shrimat is consider yourself to be a soul and be in my remembrance. And what is in the way of doing that is something called impurity, right? So every time we try to meditate, or if we want to sit in a meditation bhati for a long period of time, what we encounter is our own impurity, which is what we call as an obstacle to meditation, yeah? Sometimes it is said Maya is the obstacle to meditation, but if you think about it, Maya is the 5 vices and all, that means Maya is impurity. So I once had an opportunity to sit in meditation for 14 hours a day for 90 days. It's a long time. And there were special circumstances that made that possible. Nowadays we're too busy, it's really very difficult. But at that time, it was many years ago. But in the process of that, I discovered many things about how the mind and the sanskaras and all of these things from inside get in the way of meditation and what you have to do to get through them. And so it was a very empowering time and a very analytical time, you see, because we are presented with these ideas and they come in Hindi and we have to interpret them. You know, they come in Hindi and then they go into English, and then after that they go into a number of other languages. And in the process of that interpretation or that translation, we find ourselves having the opportunity to say, well, it could be this or it could be that. Like take, for example, just the Hindi word for purity is pavitrata. It's purity. But then there's another thing which is pavan, which is also purity, but it's a different word. Then there's shud, which is another thing. It's also purity, but it's another word. You know, and then there's sresht, that is also purity, but it's another word, you see. So there's lots of different words in the Hindi language for which there's one English word which is purity. And what is purity? Is it water when it's distilled? You know. So can we say that purity is the thing itself without anything added? That's one definition of purity. So if I go to Srimat and I say, okay, I want to be conscious of myself as a soul in my original stage, while I am in a depleted and polluted state. Do you see the problem? I see. Now today's Murli, there was this very lovely phrase where Shiv Baba says to Brahma Baba, "Hey, Tamil Pradhan soul of Krishna, you don't know who you are." Extraordinary statement, you know. And you could also take it for your own self, you know. He says, "Hey, Tamil Pradhan soul of whomever we may end up as," which we don't know, right? You don't know who you are. You see. He says you're a soul. Okay, we know that. And a soul is immortal and eternal in its purity, peace, power, love and bliss and lots of things like this, but you still don't know who you are. Right? So when you sit down to meditate, sometimes you may spend several months asking yourself this question, who am I and what am I? Do? We have to. And it's very good to do that. You don't necessarily have to have an answer, but to consider this very simple statement, who am I and what I am, and what am I? and then sort of gather together all the things you know, and then cogitate. Cogitate means think about it. Cogitate is a kind of thinking. We have ruminate, we have meditate, we have all these different words for things that we do in here, trying to figure out who am I and what's going on. So here am I, a polluted, depleted soul who's body conscious, trying to become an unpolluted, undepleted soul who's soul conscious. Isn't it? That's what we're trying to do. And we've been doing it for however many years, And, Brahma Baba took 33 years. And Dadi Prakash Mani took 73 years. And we don't know how long we have, because he keeps saying, it's going to finish like any second now. So there's an intensity and an urgency that he tells us about. And he's been telling us that since the beginning, because there's a tendency to take too long to do it. Because we have many distractions, right? But again and again we come back to this question, purification. What exactly is the purification of the self? Take, for example, all of the things that you don't like. There must be quite a lot of things you don't like. This one shouldn't be like this, that shouldn't be happening, stuff like that, right? The things you don't like. So whenever you don't like something, or you have an objection to something, that objection has a greater or lesser amount of emotion connected with it. Yeah? So that emotion is a quantity and a quality of impurity. So that thing, which is so-called wrong, bothers you. Because we are motivated by morality. Yeah? In my opinion, morality is a kind of body consciousness. Because we say this is right, that's wrong. And I remember being very interested when Baba once said in a Murli that your biggest problem, or your only problem, is that you are stuck in right and wrong. Do you remember that? It's not so long ago. So it made me think that, morality is a big form of body consciousness. And it's something that we have to come to terms with. It's all around us. But we don't necessarily have to be motivated by it. Because if we keep ourselves motivated by morality, that's worldly. Yeah? So purity is somehow beyond morality, especially moralizing. So if we say one of the definitions of Shiv Baba, one of the names of Shiv Baba, he is called the purifier. He's called the purifier of the impure. He's also called bestower of happiness and remover of sorrow. So it is also said that if a person is experiencing sorrow, that is also impurity. So for example, some of you may be experiencing sorrow at some time. It may be because of something that happened, or it may be you just feel sorrow for no very good reason. It may be that, or quite often I think it is the process of purging the soul of impurity takes the form of negative emotions arising within and causing disturbance. You must be experiencing this from time to time, yeah? And Baba has given us the powers, the 8 powers. And very often we think about applying the powers in regard to things that are happening on the outside, different events, different circumstances. But we also need to apply the powers for events and circumstances that are happening on the inside. Because a purification process involves taking the impurities of something and making them go out. So one analogy that's given for the soul, which Baba talks about quite often, is yoga as a fire, right? They say yoga Agni, or Agni Yoga. There's some organizations which teach Agni Yoga, the fire yoga. Baba says the fire of your yoga has to be sufficiently intense so that the what's called as sins can be precipitated out of the soul. And the analogy he gives is gold. When gold has other metals mixed into it, it has to be done in fire, otherwise they can't mix in. And so they have to be done with fire to pull them out as well. So the process of purifying gold involves heating that gold to a point where the other metals get burnt out. And because the melting point of iron, for example, is 2300 degrees centigrade. So you have to go to that heat just to get your Iron Age sanskaras out. And then we have the copper and the silver to deal with. You see what I'm saying? And so, now, how did the vices go in? Well, he says that lust is the problem, and lust is also a kind of passion, which is a kind of fire. So in the fire of lust and the fire of anger, all these impurities go in. And so then if you're going to get them out, and then you have to have another kind of fire so that they can get out. And so sometimes he talks about the fire of love for God. Right? Now, how are you going to get that going? So it's not so easy, right? Because you love Baba. Baba says, okay, you all love Baba. Yes, you're 100% pass in that, but then not pass in all the other things. But if our love for Baba in our meditation is to reach the point of fire that is such that all these impurities come out, and then how do we do that? So what I have observed is that there are things that happen which provoke your anger, right? Naturally. So if you're under provocation and you have very, very powerful stage of yoga, a powerful stage of love for Baba, that provocation doesn't actually move you. That is, it doesn't actually stimulate an emotion. Because your love for Baba puts you in such a condition, such a state in your mind and in your heart that you really don't care about that provocation. And Baba sometimes gives this as an analogy that when you fall in love with someone, and you're in that stage of being blissed out in love with somebody, in some forms of psychology, they call it temporary insanity. Because when you're in love with somebody, you do things that are completely insane, that you would never do if you were normal. Right? So, there's something that happens to you when you're so in love with somebody. First of all, you're focused on that person altogether. You must have been in love with somebody sooner or later, right? And that person is everything. And they're sort of miraculously beautiful. If you look at them the next day, they're not, but that day they look really beautiful and very interesting and all that. So there's a total focus that happens, and that's something that puts you into the passion of impurity, and it's very deceptive, because when you get back to normal, you realize that they're just a regular person like everybody else, and they're just as difficult to live with as any other person. But you got stuck with them because you did some act which was based on temporary insanity that got you in a bondage. Is it right? But still Baba uses it as an example. Sometimes he says, he gives the example of Layla and Majnu. You remember that from the Murli, yeah? Layla and Majnu. So they were not having a lustful relationship, but they were very focused on each other's beauty, and then they loved each other. So they didn't think about anybody else, even when the other one wasn't there. They still could see their face, and they think about them. So Baba says that we must use the knowledge and use our feelings for Baba. I mean, after all, we're here because we were looking for God. Is it right? Anybody not looking for God came here somehow for no very good reason? We had to have been looking for God. Either we're looking for God or we're looking for truth. Those two are, in a sense, interchangeable. And then we came to Baba and we said, yes, this is it. You see, so there is something that happened in all of us, which is a moment of recognition. May have happened all of a sudden, like you're hit by lightning, as they say in French. You fall in love as a coup de foudre, which means you're hit by lightning. Of course, normally you die from that. But anyway, we had one person hit by lightning. They died in a second. So, but still, this is what is said, Suddenly you see somebody and boom, that's the one, right? So you're hit by lightning, and or it could be something that grows slowly over time, right? Some people, they kind of get it, but then they want to check it, isn't it? You recognize Baba, but you want to be sure. So you check out the BK organization, the knowledge, the this, the that, all of the things, right? And slowly, slowly you get pulled in, yeah? So there is a relationship going on. And this relationship goes through many different stages. And the things that get in the way of this relationship are things about worldliness, things to do with the material world. That means people, places, and objects. Because the soul is under the influence of matter and Maya. So the soul gets pulled by beauty, by security, by whatever the weaknesses and the insufficiencies. Right? So the impurity is something that seems to fill the gaps, but it ends up putting you in bondage or polluting you or deceiving you, or you get into disillusionment and things like that. And so Baba says, have all relationships with one alone, with me alone. mother, father, sister, brother, this and that, right? Now, in some cultures, everything is relationships with people. In other cultures, things are more relationships with actions or with objects. But whatever it is, it's our involvement with the things that go on in the drama that keep us in the drama. Now, all of those things are what they are, but they're also called impurity. So if we want to have absolute purity, then it means that we are not attracted or repelled by any of the things that happen in the drama. If we're into morality, we'll be attracted by the good and repelled by the bad, so that's not useful for us. Keeps us in bondage. So we have to be independent of right and wrong, independent of good and evil in a way. And what we want to be is able to have a clear line with Baba. A clear line with Baba is no interference. You're just able to, in a second, have the power to concentrate on Baba, and no matter what's going on, it doesn't distract you. So if you find yourself distracted, it means you're impure. So for example, when the murli is going on, and somebody's walking in and out of the room, if you turn this way and that way to see who's coming and who's going, that means there's impurity. You see? Because you don't have the capacity to focus on one thing. As soon as any distraction comes, I mean, you know, someone comes, someone goes, so what? What difference does it make? It doesn't make any difference. If you know them or you don't know them, it doesn't make any difference. So what? They come, they go. Or the people around you are sleeping. You say, oh, this one's snoring or whatever. But if you're concentrated, the power of that concentration is such that those things do not actually penetrate your focus, or that do not distract you. Yeah? Sometimes people say, oh, Madhuban's very noisy. Today it was very noisy. I was there. It was very, very noisy. Lots of buses and horns and people and this and that, So we think, yoga is supposed to be very quiet, But in fact, you can imagine destruction is a fairly noisy affair, right? So if we can have absolute focus on Baba regardless of whatever's going on around us, that's a good sign. You see, that our power of concentration, and you grow this over a long period of time. I think probably initially you feel very irritated by all this noisy, distracting, this and that, right? Am I right? But as time goes by, you really don't mind. Because you kind of include it, you don't bother. You can still maintain your concentration. So on the one hand, Baba talks about firm, determined thought. So in order to pursue that firm, determined thought, to have single-minded focus on Baba, we have to have a lot of experience in the things that go on around us, so that we are not moved by good things or bad things. So in the Gita, it talks about this, that a yogi is somebody who is not affected by heat or cold or failure or success or they're healthy or they're sick or all of these different things, all these different pairs of opposites. And so this is again why I say that we need to be away from morality, because we're so pulled by good and bad, right and wrong, when we're into morality. But if instead of morality we want to have purity, it means that a stage of purity is an undisturbed stage. And it's also a very concentrated stage. So when you are concerned about how people think about you, are you concerned about that? Probably. And if they think good about you, you say, and that's very nice. And if they think ill about you, you say, that's very bad. Because people are attached to themselves, yeah? And so you mind if they speak well about you or if they speak ill about you. But then that's impurity, if you mind. Right? So you can kind of test yourself and see that when people lie about you, do you mind? You mind, right? That's impurity. It is said, truth does not need to be proved, right? There's a few things that are said about truth. You know, person who is true, they're dancing. Person who is true, the Lord is pleased with them. So the question arises, do you want Baba to be happy with you, or do you want people to say nice things about you? Because it's one or the other. If you're very lucky, Baba will be happy with you and other people will say nice things about you, but it's not always the case. If you say to yourself, if you have a firm, determined thought, you know, I want to be such that Baba will be, oriented towards me, that he will like me, you see, then other people may not like you. It happens, you see. So do you mind about that? If you don't mind about that, that's a kind of purity. Because eventually they'll like you. You know. But if you mind about that, or they'll take your stuff and they'll alter it and they'll claim credit for it. Do you mind about that? Intellectual property. Because it's this thing of attachment that's often mentioned, you know, that attachment is impurity. So if any of your, your stuff or your ideas or your persona or anything is discredited and you mind about it, that's attachment to yourself, you see. And the fact that you mind about it means you take sorrow from that thing. That's impurity. Do you understand? So, I'm not saying this is easy. It is easy Raj Yoga theoretically, right? But, as we go further, we go further with it, and we're always trying, you see, to go further and further. And so we're trying to become karmatit, right? So karmatit, this word karmatit means that you are unaffected by karma, good, bad, or indifferent. So it is said that in the golden age, the karma that you perform is neutral karma because there are no consequences. Now in the confluence age, we are trying all the time to perform pure karma. And we have to perform pure karma because we have some impure karma that we have to mitigate. Because if you do pure karma, it will cancel out a little bit of your existing impure karma, and it's very difficult to calculate how bad you are in a total way. Because you can't remember who you have been in the last 63 births and what kind of sins you may or may not have committed, and there isn't anybody who can tell you in detail. But what we can know is that if we do something that puts us into karmic debt, then it will take the form of a sanskar, which is a tendency to continue to get into debt in a similar way. So whenever we're under any kind of provocation, someone irritates us or defames us or anything like that, then the way that we react to it is that sanskara coming out. And it means that negative thing that somebody did caused you to do another negative thing. And so that proves that there's impurity. So whether that person was right or wrong to provoke you is nothing to do with anything. But the point is, they provoked you. And so that means you have impurity. Do you see what I'm saying? So when somebody does something like that, then you have to use your powers, whether it's accommodation, tolerance, facing, withdrawing, packing up, whatever it happens to be, the right one. That means that whatever anybody does to you, it doesn't do anything to you. That's purity. You see? That's how you know that you're getting pure, is that you're not affected by provocation. If your expectations are not met, you don't mind. So I think that an aspect of purity is that we have to be completely and fully disillusioned. When you experience disillusionment, do you like that? No, eh? And people say, oh, I'm disillusioned, I feel, oh God, disillusioned. It's a bad feeling. But if you analyze it non-emotionally, now ask yourself, do you want to remain under an illusion, or do you want not to have any illusions? And it is said that Maya is illusion, right? So we are under the illusion that our expectations are going to be met. Well, guess what? They may not be. And then if they're not, you feel disillusioned or you feel betrayed or something like this. This is an emotion, feeling of betrayal, a feeling of disillusionment. And when this emotion arises within you, this is impurity. And of course the thing that provokes that emotion is negative, otherwise it wouldn't work. But the thing is, something negative comes to you and it has no impact. That's purity. You see what I'm saying? So to be completely disillusioned is actually advantageous. And unless something happens that makes you disillusioned, you can't become disillusioned. So as you go along in your path of Gyan, there are various things that happen that you don't like, because they have produced these negative emotions inside you, and your morality says, this is bad, and this bad thing happened, and so I feel bad because of that thing. But actually we have to look again and say that if that bad thing succeeded in making you feel bad, it proves there is impurity. You see? So when the bad things happen, and if you don't mind, and it doesn't do anything to disturb you, then you can know that you're getting a bit pure. You see? So whenever something bad happens, it's fine. because the purpose of it is for you to be able to discern how much of a reaction you have. Maybe your reaction is very little, you just ooh, and then okay, it's all right. That means that you're fairly pure, a little bit of impurity. But if it's like, oh God, ooh, that's very impure. You see? But we don't realize that because of this morality which makes us point the finger at whoever did the whatever bad thing, So going into the depth of purity means we have to reset our perspectives on what happens to us. And we have to use so-called negative events to enable us to adopt positions in regard to ourselves where those negative things can be used to enable us to become more pure, more free, more independent, more smooth, and less emotionally affected. See, now things will happen that make you cry, right? So it'll make you cry for a few years, and then after a while you won't cry about it. Same thing, you're not crying. Why are you not crying? It's not just a factor of age, it's that you got you got past it. So all of these things are like kind of fires that burn. And I think the thing that enables us to get through all these is love for Baba. Or sometimes when some very bad thing happens, you experience a loss or some kind of natural calamity or whatever. Excuse me. You say, well, Baba told, right? Baba said this is going to happen. Do you do that? Something happens and you say, oh, Baba told us this would happen. And so whenever you say, Baba told us this would happen, it's like the knowledge gives us such a power of purity that that circumstance doesn't have the power to disturb us. So there's a purification by the knowledge, and there's a purification by how we use the knowledge, how we take it into ourselves, and how it enables us to interpret situations such that we're neutral about them. Is it okay? So anyway, of course there's many, many more things that could be said, but it's 7 o'clock by that clock. So I'll stop. And we'll have a half an hour meditation. And Sister Mira was asking me to do a commentary, so I wonder if that's what you would like. Yes? You put your hands up if you would like it. Okay, so we'll do that. Om Shanti. Baba has told us the first thing to do is to go straight to Paramdham. Leave everything and become the dot in the world of light. It's an act of absolute concentration. Applying a full stop to everything. In the eye of your mind, see the dot. You pressed the stop button on your drama. And the film is no longer playing. I, the soul, am concentrated on one. I am pure light, pure consciousness. And I am absolutely still. I am out of time and out of space. I have returned to my form as a seed. Everything is possible, but for now, nothing is happening. I am just in stillness. Focused on one. There is no attraction to the world. The attraction is to the light. Because the light is so beautiful. The light gives me everything. There is no attraction or repulsion to the things of the world, but only the attraction of the light. The pure golden white light. The source of intense love. Which enables me to see with perfect clarity. I become one with Baba. The feeling of being combined. And I go into deep stillness. Deep silence. Knowing that everything is as it should be. And then Baba says the second thing to do is to go to the angelic stage. Come down from the stillness into the angelic body. The body that is a white light shadow. Absolutely pure and subtle. With that attitude of total benevolence. Feelings of love for the world. Radiating light all around. As an angel, you move around together with the angelic form of Bab Dada. Giving Sakash to the world. Sending power to those who may be weak. Sending comfort to those who may be distressed. Sending love to the lonely and the forsaken. In the subtle angelic form, you serve the world without limit. You're so connected with Baba that you act as a conduit for all the powers and all the virtues, all the qualities of God to stream through you and reach all corners of the world. You extend a feeling of purity to the limits of the universe. You generate a feeling of love which moves across the world like waves in the ocean. And in that way you draw people's attention to the One. You feel as if you are floating through time and space, very gently, like a cloud. And you feel that Baba uses you in different ways. And the third thing that Baba tells is that you come down onto this earth as an elevated Brahmin. The embodiment of knowledge. The embodiment of Dharana, the physical expression of the thoughts in the mind of God. Feeling yourself to be ancestor of the world. You're sitting in the roots of the kalpa tree. And everything you think and feel and say and do becomes the law for those who follow you. You are the sample and the example of how to be a human being. You are the adopted child of Brahma. A Brahmin by karma. Each and every moment of the day, your actions follow the lines drawn by Brahma and Saraswati. You are the tapasvi soul who sits in meditation, connected with the source, ruminating on the knowledge and translating those concepts into practical actions. You understand yourself very well. You understand God, and you understand negativity. You know that you are immortal, contained in a mortal body, and you demonstrate that stage of detachment as you live the lotus life in this world. You move about looking like a regular person, but inside there is a beautiful spiritual rose blooming. And made visible through the happiness on your face, the wisdom in your words, and the atmosphere of your presence. You feel very fortunate. We are the direct students of God. You are His inheritor children. You move around to inspire others to claim their inheritance too. You remain always connected, so that at any moment in this drama, whenever you want, you can apply the dot, become the dot, and go instantly to the soul world. focused in pure concentration on the One. Absolutely still. Out of time and space. Connected with the light. Silent. In the broad space of eternity. At any moment, you descend to the angelic world as an instrument to perform some service. And you descend into the human world to move around among the people as a beacon showing the path, drawing people's attention to the source. Being a sample, an inspiration. A person who is constantly happy because you know and in a second fly up to the soul world. Be again absolutely still, focused on the light. Stable and steady, concentrated. And in that stillness, bring the future world into the present.